Hi coaches, this is Coach Kyle Nelson. I'm back here with another video for you on practice planning. This time I'm going to take you through the first part of our practice. This is going to be broken into two videos. You'll get the second one in a couple days. And I'm going to look at what I do to plan a quality practice. I've already talked about long-term practice planning and how that fits into your greater vision as a coach. So if you haven't checked that out yet, please go back through your inbox, find that email, listen to that one, and then come back here and check out our individual practice planning or planning quality practices. My most proud moment of a coach comes from my practice planning. So I was in class, I heard two players talking. One was a baseball player, one was a softball player. The softball player was talking about how it was raining and she hoped that practice was canceled that day. And I really don't think that my player knew that I was listening to this, but he literally said to her, "We hope it isn't," we meaning his team, "because we have a lot of fun at practice." And obviously, we take a very serious tone at practice, but also we like to be competitive and make sure that kids are having fun as they are, as they're learning and as they're going through their season. And so that happened a couple of years ago, and so that really is probably one of my most proud moments as a coach. So that made me think a little bit, why do our players like practices? Well, they're going to learn. They're going to compete. They're always active. We don't let them stand around. There's some designed rest periods, but they're not standing in a line of 12 players while one coach hits a fungo to them. They're familiar with the practices, but they're challenged. I value their time. I don't squeeze a 2-hour practice into 4 hours. I try to squeeze a 4-hour practice into 2 hours, and I make sure that everything we do has a purpose so that they're not doing something meaningless. I would never have them be active for activity's sake. I want to make sure that they are doing things that make sense and doing things that we believe in. So in order to maximize practice time, space, I'm a lot like you probably. I have one assistant coach, maybe two on a good year. And I have a gym in the off season or in the beginning of the season before it gets warm. And I have a field with a single batting cage in the regular season. And so I don't have a ton of resources, but what I do have is a little bit of creativity and a little bit of imagination. And so every day I make sure that I have a written practice plan. And you can see here, this is the beginning of one of my practice plans I created of the 10 practice plan series. It starts with an active warm-up. Usually the warm-up is the most wasteful time of your practice, but I make sure that the first 2 minutes we are working on something. We're working on fielding technique. We're working on rundowns. We're working on outfielders getting routes to balls. We're working on something like that. This first part of the practice does not have to be a waste. I make sure that after they do that 2-minute segment where they have the baseball. So they're, again, pitchers covering first, rundowns, things like that. Something to get the heart rate up instead of jogging to the foul pole and back. After that, they're going to go through 5 stations that encompass arm care, agility, rotational explosiveness, dynamic flexibility, and static flexibility. And so they have those 5 stations that they're going to work through. And they don't even realize through most of it that they're not actually just warming up, they're getting better at something. And that's really my goal through that warm-up, is to take the first 12 minutes of practice and make sure that they are getting better at something. We go right into base running then. Base running is difficult to teach because it's hard to create live-like reads in the game, and it's often under-taught. We want to make it as realistic as possible. And what I mean by that is I don't just run a single, then run a double, then run a triple, then run a home run. Yeah, that's you need to learn how to do those things. But the reality of those things is that they're more conditioning than teaching, and I want to teach while I condition. And so we try to make it as realistic as possible with the philosophy that second base is where you make your money. That's where all the hard decisions come in. That's where you have to actually read the ball, understand where it's going, understand where the fielders are. And so we practice base running from second base off of a fungo or off of a live hitter quite a bit. Also the same at third base. First base seems to be relatively easy for kids to understand. Ball on the ground, you go. Liner, you take a step back. Ball in the air, you get as far as you can while getting back. Or, as Albert Amora taught us, On a deep fly ball where you can see the outfielder's feet stop, you know he's going to catch it. Maybe you tag and try to advance a base. By the way, possibly the play that won the World Series for the Cubs. But we do spend a ton of time working on second base, reads off the bat, reads off a fungo, reads relative to outfielders to see what balls are going to get down, what balls aren't. And that's really where you can make your money, is by learning how to get reads at second base. After that, we're going to go into our throwing program. I give my players a ton of freedom in this throwing program. I don't say take 7 throws from 80 feet, take 10 throws from 90 feet, take 12 throws from 100 feet. What I do is I have my infielders, catchers, outfielders, pitchers, and two-way position players working on things they're going to need to do in the game. Here's a couple of examples. Middle infielders are going to need to make tags. Corner infielders are going to need to relay the ball. Outfielders are going to need to throw the ball off the ground and from the air. Catchers are going to need to have a quick transfer and proper footwork. Pitchers are going to need to work on their picks. And so during this time, we're getting all of those things done so that we don't have to take specific time out of practice in order to get them done. So that's the first part of our practice planning. So if you have any questions on practice planning, please email me, Kyle@cornerstonecoachingacademy.com. Check your inbox in a couple days to get the second part of this video on short-term practice planning or single practice planning and what happens after our throwing program.